Dave can catch up. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Strategic Planning Committee for Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. Let the record show that all aldermen are present. Yep. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous committee meeting. Can I get a second, please?
So second.
Second by Alderman Gonzalez. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion's carried. With no unfinished business, we'll move on to new referrals for consideration. So, this has been an item that I've been trying to collect some data on and work on, taking some past information and put together a presentation on trying to make a concerted effort, perhaps, and we can even talk, we'll go into detail, about improving the bike lane infrastructure around the city of Olean. So, without further ado, I know you guys love my presentations. So, for starters, I want to try to note the concept right on the very first page. I saw being shared on Facebook, I believe Hamburg, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Hamburg, that has bike lanes that they actually paint a different color to try to designate, right, to make drivers aware, to give a little bit more of a sense of comfort or protection, if you will, for the bicyclists that use a lane like that. And I've got some pictures of our existing bike lanes, and even though there's no barrier between that bike lane and traffic, I think it's probably safe to bet that it's easier to recognize and respect the fact that that's a separate lane. So we don't have to read all of this, okay, but this is per New York State DOT. And really the concept that I want to talk about from a strategic planning point of view is called complete streets. Complete streets are streets designed and operated to enable safe use and support mobility for all users. So the target is all ages, all abilities, recognizing that drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists, okay, everyone should have access and the ability to use our streets. And really, as we put money and capital and resources into improving and replacing our streets, I would suggest that we start to try to encompass a complete streets policy or a complete streets mentality, okay, strategy, as we sink money and millions of dollars into, like we are for Washington Street. Why don't we try to make it safer and more efficient? And as you can see, yeah, street policies are set at all different levels, but really it's the local level. I mean, we're ultimately the ones who fund when we redo numerous streets, and it's not every year we take on a huge project, but certainly we should start planning more of those because our infrastructure is, well, pretty poor, right? So our DPW department does as good of a job as they can with the funding they have, but we really need to try to move forward in maybe a little bit of a different direction. And that direction is not only just using streets for automobiles, but for bicyclists, improving walkability, all of that. So some communities have actually taken on a complete streets policy. And so this is something that I'll continue working on. But truly, passing a policy at the Common Council level would to help formalize our community's intent to start this new planning way of thinking, right? To design and maintain streets so they're safer for everyone. So here are our current bike lanes, which kind of randomly start and randomly end. And I appreciate the efforts because, let's face it, the old streetscapes that we had around the city, it was very much vehicle-centric, right? It's no surprise we have 4 lanes down North Union Street, and this city made a shift to be more walkable But now I would add, now is the time, because younger families are not only looking for walkability, but bikeability as well. And so there's a couple pictures on Wayne Street where an attempt at a bike lane goes down Wayne Street. It starts around, I believe that's North 12th Street, and it kind of ends right before the railroad tracks over by the middle school. And then, of course, that's one of the bike lanes up through town. Now, myself and my family, we've, kind of said damn the torpedoes, and we've taken to riding the bike lanes. A lot of individuals, in the community feel the current bike lanes are unsafe, but I think if we just get more people to use them, I've been really impressed with how really traffic does respect the fact. I can't think of anyone who went, zipping and roaring past us and had any close calls. They really tend to, especially up around North Union Street, they do tend to slow down and respect you if you are in the bike lane. But I do think some small improvements could make it, again, the appearance of safety could make people feel safer to use them, and I guess I'll try to just run through some of these concepts here. So what is DOT? What are the best standards for complete streets plans? Really, they put them into three different classes. Class 1 is a shared use path, which would, in high traffic areas, that really should be Olean's focus. It also comes with a higher price tag, right? It comes with a cost. It's giving protected lanes for bicyclists. Class 2 is kind of a bit of where maybe you would categorize a little bit of what we see uptown on North Union Street, but a little bit more of a buffered bike lane, more conventional. And then Class 3 are for lower traffic areas, side streets, that you call bike boulevards. And, the ultimate goal, right, would be a Class 1 bikeway. For some place that has a high degree of traffic, you would have something like a shared use path, and I believe it's been talked about on East State Street when we are talking about some of the DRI projects, and they talk about a shared use path. You're talking about a path that both bicyclists and pedestrians and walkers can use in a safe manner. You don't get into each other's way, and at the same time you're kept out of the way of traffic itself with automobiles. Most protective, obviously also most expensive. You're creating a separate raised track or one-way protected cycle track, so on and so forth, right? Really, you target those areas for, again, lots of vehicle usage, and Class 2, kind of falls in that middle. A reasonable amount of safety, pretty good sustainability, and a reasonable cost. If you want to, I'll be sure to send this presentation to you guys. You can read all the fine print. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but these would be on medium traffic areas. This is the one I really want to get to, is a Class 3. So really, it's the most affordable, it's the most cost-effective, very sustainable, and it's better than what we currently have. Now, granted, there is a lower amount of protection, but it's a lot better than what we have currently. And so what is it? It's having street markings, it's having signs to say share the road, right? Allowing vehicles, automobiles to understand this is a heavy, bike path area. And so one of the things that I'm proposing, at least as we're getting to it here, down Washington Street, is what we call a bike boulevard. So identifying an actual route, having a route that is planned, having some street markings that indicate this is a bike boulevard, okay, perhaps even speed management, whether it's a reduced speed to say 25 miles an hour, and some street signs, share the road, watch for bicycle use. So where, from a strategic planning perspective, where should we be looking? And this is something that I reached out and kind of got an overview of this from Bob. Bob had, I think, used this perhaps even on a previous presentation. But when we talk about creating a bike network, always our focus has been on walkability, but likewise, as we have younger families move into our community, we need to focus on bikeability too. And really what's the coolest thing about this is it's not a real expensive way, right? You're not, when you're using bike boulevards, or even class 2 bike lanes, you're not spending an arm and a leg. It doesn't cost like a roundabout costs, right? You're not spending $1 million on this stuff. You're just identifying with signage, maybe a painted bike lane, those types of things, but it's connecting the entire city of Olean, right? It's hitting all 7 wards. And the end goal should be creating some pathway from all 7 wards to our park spaces. We're putting a great amount of money into our park spaces. We're revitalizing Oak Hill Park. We hit King Street Park, right? And as we continue looking at Franchot Park, and certainly we did Lincoln Park, and we need to create safe, family-friendly ways of mobility. So for Washington Street, what does it look like? Washington Street is 30 feet wide. It could be modified into a bike boulevard using shared lane marking, signage, and maybe some additional trees for traffic calming purposes. High-speed areas that could lead to conflicts between vehicles and bikes could be evaluated as sharrows, provide the least protection to cyclists. So although again, there's the least amount of protection, but it's a heck of a lot better than what we have now, and we're putting over $1 million into Washington Street, so why not take this opportunity to try to improve it and thereby improve the community, the neighborhood. So here's just a couple, where would you look for a class 1 bike lane where you use a protected path? Probably Wayne Street could certainly use some semblance of separation between the street and the bike lanes. Certainly speeds are quite high, and although we're out there and we have our helmets on, cars really don't slow down. Cars slow down when we're on North Union Street and they drive past us, but when we're on Wayne Street, they go full throttle past us. And so yeah, it is a little scary, I'm not going to lie. But also, as we look to invest in Fornes Park, we've talked about putting a trail system into Fornes Park before. We have, the existing trail system that goes through War Vets Park, and just trying to, in our efforts to reactivate our park spaces. So that would be another area, certainly with that bridge over East State Street over the river, would be a class 1 pathway as well. So ultimately this is trying to tie together the ultimate strategic plan, which is creating a modal framework that allows for walkability and bikeability and drivability all around our community. And as we're trying to complete, we're doing walkable phase 2. Maybe at some point we hit Front Street and we create that 2-mile shared use path all around our business district, and kind of that 2-mile future concept to get people out and moving. And I already talked about neighborhood connections, but that's just further neighborhood connections to that downtown loop, possible expansion of the River Trail network down into the Fornes area. So what am I bringing to you? I'm asking the council for feedback, but to ask DPW to get an estimate of what type of dollars and cents would it take to do some of that upgrades to create a bike boulevard down Washington Street. Looking to connect the River Trail, which is over by North 20th Street, to go down Washington Street to Oak Hill Park, right? where we're already committed to investing capital to improving and revitalizing that park, and then continuing it down Lawrence Street so it can connect to our downtown region. So without saying, can we commit to it, I guess I'm looking for you guys to say, well, let's see, what would that take? What type of cost would that take? We already have the project going on, and now's the time to really have that discussion. And if the cost is reasonable, then I would look to ask your approval and support to use some of the project contingency funding to fund that improvement on Washington Street. And then possibly to pursue an actual complete streets policy for the city as we help to try to tie in that strategic vision. Maybe not everybody gets it, all right? But this is about improving neighborhoods and connecting neighborhoods. It's about improving the character, the amenities that don't require a ton of upkeep, right? So sustainability, improving safety, but also, and ultimately, increasing property values in our tax base, right? Young people with young families want to live in neighborhoods that provide these types of characteristics. And that ultimately increases the demand for our properties. So that's my spiel, but I guess I'm looking for possible feedback from the council.
John, Washington Street, wouldn't that be just, after the road repaved, wouldn't that be just 3 on tape? Correct me if I'm wrong about that, you would seal down to the pavement? For Washington Street, John wants some sort of a bike symbol on the road. Wouldn't that be just like 3 on tape that you would put on the tape, or on the roads, similar to those arrows?
Yeah, it's tape, it's probably signage.
Is that 3 on tape, is that expensive?
Yeah, I mean, it's not super expensive, but yeah,
It's not as expensive as putting like a protector. What is it?
Like a curb with
yeah.
a lane.
And I think that's the only way we could ever make that happen in the majority of these side streets, right? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do something for bikeability, right? Like I think that's the bike boulevard is a great idea. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Linda.
Bob, over on Front Street for Phase 2, are we putting any markings for bike lanes over there? I know on Main Street, people ride up and down Main Street on their bikes, and there's no bike lanes. It would be a great place to put one. But it would connect Front Street to go uptown. Is there anything in the Phase 2 plan? I don't remember seeing anything for
There's
the bike
a
lane.
multi-use path.
That's phase 3, I think.
we try to get people off the road.
Right.
Bike lanes, they're conventional. I mean, I saw you said they're reasonable cost. They are that safe. They're accommodating for the people who already know how to bike. But yeah, those people will be on the side and will be, 10 foot wide for bikes and pedestrians. But there are bike lanes in front of the hospital. So where the median is, you notice that it's really wide there. So it's got a 12-foot lane and a 6-foot bike lane.
Would it be possible to just take the lane that's in front of the hospital and you're talking about Front or Main Street?
Main Street.
Okay, and just extend it down, because Main Street is a straight street. Like I said, it's a quiet neighborhood usually, but it's many people. I mean, probably a couple dozen people ride their bikes up and down Main Street. And I think John brought up a good point. It would be nice if all neighborhoods could come together and come downtown. But I'm just thinking of streets that are just straight shots that aren't complicated to maybe do something.
So the proposal, Linda, I mean, I think you're spot on. The proposal has way up there by the hospital, unfunded network, corridor. And part of that is, all it takes is money, right? And what neighborhoods do we want to create that type of network in? And maybe we can't do it all at the same time, but we should, from a strategic planning point, start planning it and saying, we can do this year, so much, let's set aside funding, because you're absolutely right. I mean, that's from the hill, from Main Street, there's a lot of families over there, there's a lot of people that, and as we're putting that money into Phase 2, why not, right?
Well, I think we have a way, it gives us a way to have the main hubs where we spend all the big bucks, right? To have the protected multi-use paths or
Yes.
whatever, like the downtown hub and then connect it to the river trail, but then you have to have a way to feed all those.
Right.
And I think
Exactly.
the bike boulevard idea does that
Yeah.
pretty perfectly, right? It keeps people off keeps bikes off the sidewalks.
Yep.
You know, yeah, totally agree.
I like the idea of Washington Street as a bike boulevard as well. My only concern is logistics. There's a lot of, like in my ward, right at Oak Hill Park, there's some houses with driveways, but there's, if you get to between 6th and 7th, there's like almost no houses with driveways. And so there's a lot of on-street parking there. People wrap around the block to park as it is. And so 30 feet wide also accounts for those parking spots. So you'd have to eliminate parking, I feel, if you were going to add.
So the one lane is for parking, Kevin.
Okay.
Right? So see the right-hand lane, that is a parking lane. So a bike boulevard is not necessarily designating, you know, hey, this is a bike's path, right? You're sharing it with automobiles, but automobiles are seeing clearly, hey, I have to share this space, right? So it has the 8-foot parking lane, but also the, you know, the two-way traffic.
There's spots on Washington where you can park on either side. Or is it all basically, I mean, maybe it switches sides, but...
I think it's all the north side of the street you have to park.
Okay. So it's not like that you'd be taking away, the parking is staying the same.
Okay, that's,
I think so.
That's what I was worried about with logistics, you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
start, you know, adding a little bit of width to some of the lanes so that, you know, that's just, and obviously we're going to be dealing with that with Washington Street project anyways. I mean, there's a lot of blind spots too due to the parking that's there, and I hate to eliminate people's parking spots, but at the same time, we have a lot of accidents over in that same vicinity I just described, so.
Yeah.
Right. And I think back to Main Street, that neighborhood's a little different because up to a certain point, I think it's to Hamilton. After Hamilton, all the way up to Delaware, where you get on to 16, there's no sidewalks on the one side. So that would be a totally different situation over there.
So you think it should be a bike boulevard there?
Oh, I do.
Oh, okay.
We have people riding bikes all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, think
It's nice
about
and flat.
Main Street, does have bike lane on it, but Front Street and Main Street, especially like say Genesee Street or maybe Ogiad, if you want to get to there, maybe you want them on the sidewalk in front of the hospital, you get 10-foot wide. In front of the school, which I think is restricted from having bikes on the sidewalk. I think that's one of the laws we have in place. If you can't ride your bike on Main Street in front of the school, that could be 10-foot wide path. Get that bike lane out of there, you know, because people are going to speed there, they're going to speed on Main Street, Front Street again. That's really not proper for, say, bike boulevard. You're going to get some hill that's on there, you got to get people off the
Yep.
curb.
But there's also a natural, that makes sense for a protected bike path or a protected multi-use path because it connects to, I mean, it would go right down to Country Fair, right to the river trail,
Mm-hmm.
and then right up to North Union Street, like,
So,
Up front?
what's on the lane.
Oh, okay.
That's
Wayne?
what we were talking about.
They were.
where's the map
Yeah,
here?
go to that one. That one.
This one here?
Now, the one that shows the downtown loop.
Oh,
Yeah.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, and see, that doesn't really connect to the river trail anywhere, right? But Wayne Street would make a good
Yeah.
starting point.
And it has, I mean, there's the connecting point, like you said, behind Country Fair.
Yep.
But, you know, additionally, if you look at our, I'm sorry for flipping back and forth. If you see where Wayne Street is, there could be a cross section if, you know, if you guys, if we can move forward, say, with putting one down Washington Street. You could use North 12th Street as a connecting point too, between, you know, obviously the whole point is to stay off of West 8th Street, right? So you could have one that runs, you know, perpendicular, or I'm sorry, parallel. And you probably should have one down Henley Street, one down Washington Street, one down Wayne Street. And then you could use, you know, possibly even North 12th Street as a cross section. It's about getting from one side of the city to the other safely, efficiently, and effectively. So, and I think we just need to decide, you know, how we want to tackle it. I mean, obviously, to do it all at once is a big task, but you know, how we want to plan for that.
You might want to pick a different street than 12th though to cross connect, just because 12th Street's just kind of like, yeah, 12th's like,
That's the truck route.
Well, that's
It's
something
hard
else
to
I want to
drive
bring
down
up.
that one
Yeah, it's.
That's something else that my people on 12th Street want me to bring
Oh
up.
yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure nobody likes the fact that it's a truck route and it's everyone sneak by to get to Country Fair from
Right.
the base, but I mean,
Agreed, but
John, like for North Union Street up here where these roundabouts are, like the village of Hamburg has a strip for their bike path, but it's, I don't know if it's paint or what it is, but it's like a reddish color. And it's really looks nice going through the village, seeing that decoration of the concrete. So I was just wondering, would that be cost effective, or is that something you could do for North Union Street?
I think they use colored pavement, so there's dye in the pavement. Pretty sure that's what they have, and that's gonna last a long, long time. Like the paint, it's really expensive, it's epoxy paint. Like what you see more often nowadays is like ladder type of crosswalks or where there's conflict areas. And I mean, almost always at an intersection, it's the place where it's safe, right? So you'll see ladder type of green, things like that, to save money because they're spaced 6 feet apart instead of built in solid like that. So.
how old is Hamburg's?
I kind of showed a picture like this, Dave, with,
Okay. A lot of.
I showed a picture
Be
like
careful
that.
with your dye colors.
You know, like with a paint.
Oh, I must have missed that one.
Yeah, you were.
Green
But-
green and red turn horrible colors after about 10 years.
Yeah, in Washington DC downtown, they redid that down there. The center median used to be for turning, now is strictly bike lane for family, two-way travel. It's super wide, so there's plenty of traffic to go through there, but that's something we could probably incorporate somewhere
Right.
along that trail where maybe there's a designated area where two-way can go in the middle, down the middle, and then you still have your 2 lanes as long as there's no parking that we're taking away on that street.
Well, since we're actually on the topic, there is one other area that kind of correlates to this particular proposal, and I was going to wait until we talked about the capital projects, but as we are talking about Washington Street, I reached out to the mayor and to Bob. So just for the sake of argument, Bob, how much contingency funding does the Washington Street project have?
Well, it's got 50,000 contingency, but like additional project funds, which my understanding, we have to approach the council to spend, like after bid, there's 203,000
Okay.
plus 50,000 in contingency is in your handout.
So about 300,000?
250, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what I'm passing out is an overview or a top view of Washington and North 4th Street. So it's kind of a funky intersection, and you know, if we're looking to make a commitment to increasing, you know, safety, transportation, and possibly intersect down Washington to intersect with Lawrence to get a bike route to our downtown region, then I reached out to Bob about, without breaking the bank, what type of improvements could be made to that 4th Street in Washington intersection. I'm sorry, Kevin, I didn't get to you.
Oh. Thanks, Phil.
So, let's see here. Bob, would you be able to talk a little bit about what your, maybe some ideas you might have as far as improving the intersection at Washington and North 4th Street?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when we did the steps, our engineering team actually worked on some improvements. Mainly the radius, like let's say you're coming eastbound on Washington Street and you're turning right towards Lawrence Street. There's a really big radius there, and I've studied the accidents there, and there aren't a lot of accidents, but speeds going around that radius are pretty fast. And being like a school route, so when school lets out or even before school, kids are coming from the high school and middle school towards the park, and, you know, there's a lot of issues, I think, with crossing there and speeds, so, main focus, I guess, would be on that radius. If you look at that sidewalk and go out there and take a look, it's really pitched. It's not ADA compliant. People with a buggy or even someone in a wheelchair is probably, you know, resisting the urge to go towards the road because it's sloped so much. It's way over 2%. You know, so pulling that sidewalk out and redoing the radius there, kind of bringing the park out closer to the road, reducing the pavement area that we have to maintain and salt, plow. And then it would shorten crossings across Washington Street, that kind of school route that I was talking about, and then to get to Lawrence Street too, if you were, say, coming from Washington Street neighborhood to downtown. We put in new curb ramps in front of the stops, and there's the crossings there. They really need updated curb ramps and high visibility crossings. At one point, we talked about putting like brick crossings in there. I don't know if that's a possibility, but at the time, we talked about some fun stuff. But from a safety aspect, just controlling that radius, which would control speeds, and putting in some high vis crosswalks. I wouldn't change where the stop signs are or the traffic pattern. I think that's just asking for more accidents, at least for the first few years.
So where are the stop signs right now? There's one here, right?
Yep.
So if we pulled that curb in, or you know, made it tighter, we wouldn't want to put a stop sign here and here, like make it a three-way.
I don't think so. I mean, think about that stop at Walmart when you're coming from the cinema and the intersections aren't aligned.
Yeah.
And people like never know what to do there. And I think that's part of the problem. This was like, this was fixed, quote unquote, you know, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago into what it is now. Because I think it was less controlled than it is. But I don't think you want to make that a four-way stop, because every other stop has a stop sign. I think you just want to slow everybody down a little bit.
Are these stops Lawrence? Is there a stop sign there? Right here, Lawrence.
Yeah, Lauren and Fourth both have a stop at both of those corners.
Okay.
And then Fourth on the opposite end by Washington has a stop sign.
So if you're going, what is it, south on 4th, you're going to stop at Lawrence.
No.
No.
We're going north on
Yeah.
You're going to stop.
You're gonna go towards the school.
Okay, so
Stop
you go
sign.
through, then you.
Here's Wayne Bond Street. So you're going to stop here.
Yep.
You're going to stop over here.
Yep.
And then you're going to stop over here, but not on the street. That's this here.
That's the current pattern.
There's only 3 stops.
So it's possible to drive east on Washington Street and go all the way to Lawrence Street, and you never make a stop.
Right.
You go eastbound, and then you hang that curve. And right now, that what Bob's pointing out is that curve is pretty tight. And what he's proposing is to slow down traffic, bringing that curb out a little bit there.
It's not unlike what we're doing in the Phase 2 project.
Yeah.
With North Berry and,
Yeah.
and Maine.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a weird, sloppy
Right.
intersection.
Yeah.
It's always been like
Not that different from York Street or Olean, though.
yeah.
Shorter crossing, widening sidewalk.
This has been talked about doing something here since the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Washington Street is just riddled with these, because then you get down to like 7th and Washington where Buffalo intertwines, and that's just usually a mess too. Just like the Walmart. The Walmart's a perfect example. It's like people just can't make that connection where literally it is straight, but you have to go 45 over that way.
There's rules to the road though, who has the right of way. And I think that's more or less teaching back at Olean General or drivers ed or whatever, if the people just aren't paying attention to that. Same
Yeah.
thing with the circles, because in DC they're 2-3 lanes wide, and they don't have the issues we have. We just have a single lane and everyone's, oh yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
it's just one of those things where they just need more teaching in school and
Well,
drivers.
there's a lot of, I don't know, I don't want to say inconsistencies, but remember Nate brought up a thing, it was like 13th, I think, as you go south on 13th to West Henley, like some of those side streets, there's a stop sign, like 4-way, and then some of them, it's not, and if you're not paying like really good attention, it's easy to just right out into them. Which is not to say we should make all of them stop signs, but just kind of one of those,
Consistency.
yeah.
Well, I think part of the problem is it's up to the council to vote to put in signs, and maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it should be the police or the fire should be telling us where people should be stopping, not necessarily leave it up to us, say, a neighbor wants a stop sign because
Yeah,
they can't
that's,
back out.
that's like a thing,
And
like
that's
a
the
political
thing.
thing, and yeah,
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't be the ones determining that.
right.
I feel like we've gotten better at that, though. We reach out to
Good practice.
we ask DPW and the police to comment
Yeah,
and
that's
do
the
that.
policy now, but in
Yeah.
the past.
Oh, in the past
that
it was,
wasn't.
yeah.
Yeah, remember when, I think it was Adam Jesser had that one.
Oh, my God.
Over on, people lost their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how many times I've accidentally gone through that? Sorry, Chief. I just I forget that stop sign is there, and I just
Statute of limitations
like
is what, chief?
every time I'm like Jester. So I guess I just wanted to bring this forward. If you support the idea of at least getting some bids, some ideas of what these things would cost, I wanted to come to you guys first, and now I can ask DPW to kind of come back with what would these improvements to the project cost, and maybe we can, because now's the time to do it since Washington Street's going to be getting paved pretty soon and all that type of stuff.
I think the sooner we can do it, the better, because this isn't just gonna overnight make the streets safer for bikes, right?
Right.
We're gonna paint them on the road and we'll designate that, but we have to give people time to learn that
Mhm.
they need to share the roads with bikes,
Mhm.
with people on bikes. And,
No, I'm good with it.
yep.
PR, you have to do a lot of PR
Yeah.
and education. As Vern said, it's about education.
Yeah.
Bob, a question on Washington Street. I know last year, year before, they paved it, made it nice and smooth, and then it came down a week or two later and put tar and gravel down. We're not doing that again, are we?
This portion is a mill and pave, so
Okay.
what you're describing is hot in place recycling, so where we like melt the road and mill it up.
Yep.
That's not a finished course, meaning like you can't drive on that forever, it'll just
Okay.
gravel. So then we tar, that was like, was it 15th to the Walsh,
Yes.
21st Street?
Horrible, yeah.
So no, at least this portion is not getting that treatment, but we do that around town, on Reed Street, I got it last same year, so we do that often, it's quite a bit cheaper,
Okay.
so.
The dust goes away after 2-3 years.
Yeah, it's quite a year, yeah.
Quite a bit cheaper and significant.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
So, Bob, would you mind getting us some ideas of costs for these projects,
Yeah,
for these improvements?
yeah.
Great.
We probably have to decide on the intersections soon.
The sooner the better.
We can wait until spring on things.
Sure. It's not going to be any biking in the winter.
Before we pave, I think it's silly to pave it and then dig it and pavement and curbing and storm sewer and stuff, so.
Okay. Would the contractor be able to make those changes as they're doing it now, or would that have to be you think possibly? Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you guys for listening. So we'll see what Bob comes back with. Okay. Next up, we have some discussion items. The consultant agreement for the pavement reconstruction of the airport. Director Ring.
In an effort to get this information to you sooner, we put this on for discussion, but we still have the construction project to be completed this year at the airport. It's gone through probably 4 resolutions between seeker and grant approval and award of the contract, which will be awarding to Lakeshore Pavement, or it's already been awarded to Lakeshore Pavement. So this particular agreement is for inspection services. And this all rolls into the FAA grant. It's all funded 95% through the FAA grant. So CNS is our consultant for this project, and they have been for a number of years. They're a great company, and they basically just through the FAA process have proposed this contract to us
Okay. Just an update? No action needed?
I'll pass a resolution in 2 weeks.
Okay,
Just wanna get information to you,
okay. Thanks.
Sooner.
Okay, thank you, Bill. All right, next up, we have the UCS contract. Mayor?
This is the Unified Court System, and this is an annual contract we have with them for the maintenance and upkeep of this section here of the building, their offices, and they have another office down in the basement that they use, and plus some storage rooms. So this is an annual contract with them. They will provide us with $35,599 a year. So we just wanted this is a renewal. So I'm bringing it to you, and it'll be here for resolution for next week for the renewal. Authorizes to sign the renewal.
That's all we get for this facility?
I was gonna say, like a zero.
That's all we get for this is 35,000?
For cleaning and maintenance.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't get any rent.
Oh, we don't get rent?
Well,
And the other thing is.
they could pack up and go somewhere else, like
We're
Portville.
We're obligated to have a city court.
Okay.
Okay. But the thing that we're not getting this year is we requested 17, it comes out to they have 17% of the building is theirs.
Yeah,
So we did request 17% for the HVAC,
yeah,
okay, and also 17% for the project that's going on out here.
sure.
And that has been denied. So the state has said that, or the Unified Court System came back and said that the state doesn't have any money, so they're denying that.
We don't have money either.
Yeah. If that's what you do, you just make them work in the cold.
Yeah.
Can we shut off parts of the HVAC to this side?
It's very frustrating working with them. So.
Okay.
Love to watch a judge sit in his robes with no heat.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, thank you. Last on strategic planning is just the monthly update on some of the ongoing capital projects, where we are as far as any risks, timing, estimate to complete, funding, so on and so forth. So I reached out to Bill and to Bob and asked to give us some updates on the capital projects. So we talked a lot about Washington Street already. Anything additional as far as things moving timely on Washington Street?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna go through
Yeah.
every line item
Sure.
unless you have questions, but I gave you really the financials. On
Okay.
Washington Street, they finished the 8-inch main today. 4th Street is already in service. Those people on 4th Street are already getting water from the water main.
Great.
Now we're done with 4th. Half of that is tested. Now they need to do the services, the intersection connections. Up to this point, we haven't used any field change payment, which is our 5% contingency in the project. We obviously haven't touched the additional project funds. All indications are this project will come in pretty significantly under budget. We can reevaluate in the winter if we're not going to move forward with phase 2. So at some point we'll approach you all with a plan for phase 2. We're working through grant stuff because that being a historic preservation district, SHPO has to send us a letter that it's okay to do what we're doing there and that long delay. So
Okay.
we're working through that again. We're under budget, so not a lot of concerns there with that project. So any questions on?
During the construction of this project, did you guys, I don't know did they just discontinue any of the old lines and leave them in the earth, or did they bring up the water lines when they moved? You just abandoned them. Okay, I didn't know if, just for peace of mind, I know we thought that a lot of our water loss was under, some major streets like that, and I just didn't know if we had discovered any, maybe sinkholes around some of the old abandoned lines, or.
No, we cut it off wherever part of the design is making sure that we cut it off and fill in with brick and mortar so that it doesn't fill up with water, fill up with ground or something.
Sure.
Create a sinkhole, but yeah, we just leave it on the ground.
Okay.
Because of cost consideration.
Sure.
Okay. Phase 2?
Yeah, we've only had one invoice for the project. They asked for the mobilization costs. Right now, we don't have any change orders, but for the second invoice, we're going to have some 46,000 in field change payment contingency. We think we're somewhere near level. We've had some reductions, we've had some increases. So we're close to that 46,000 in contingency as we get billed for the first significant bill. They're working mainly on the north side of the bridge. We have to make a decision in the next couple of weeks of whether they're going to move to the south side. There's a lot of delays with small parts. There's a lot of issues with getting concrete this time of year. And from what we understand, the blacktop plant's going to shut down at a certain time, and they're not going to stay open for anybody. So we're definitely dealing with some COVID kickback on maybe not being able to finish this year. So we're coming up with a plan. And if we do have to start next year, we have Olean phase 3 next year. And we don't want to bottleneck, both connections from this Olean. So we're figuring out how to finish this one in the spring and then start phase 3. So that's really where a lot of the focus has been. But budget-wise, nothing to be concerned about at this point.
So it's most likely that this will punt the completion till spring? Possibly?
Still up in the air, yeah.
Okay, possible.
Just we're running out of time.
Yeah.
We just can't plan on November being nice when the weather
Right.
typically turns. We need to pay is really a big thing.
Okay. So if you do have to, a portion for spring, if we did have to wait, would be over the bridge on the North Berry side. We are going to finish the 4 corners.
Yeah, we gotta have assurances that they'll complete the north side pretty much 99% done. We might not get tree plantings. They're gonna do top course though, paving, and we're hoping they'll do some kind of striping because of the way the traffic pattern has changed. We're kind of expecting them to, if they do only finish that portion. And we don't know whether the push buttons, the pedestrian signal will be up because there's a lot of delays on parts for electric.
Okay. So it is the other side. Thank you.
All right, how about the pump station?
So they have not built this yet either, but we have had a number of change orders for that project. Mainly because the tree work was out of the city budget. So I just added that back in. That was $18,000, but plus the survey was $900. That wasn't really accounted for, but we had some reductions. When this type of project, we had a contractor to value engineer. If there's a way they're comfortable doing something, and they can do it for cheaper, and we allow that as long as it meets specs. So, they changed the dip the block. We got a reduction for that. And then we eliminated the tower, so we got a reduction for that work. So right now we get 36 feet in contingency. Our total change orders have changed the total property cost by $88. So we're right now, they're far along. They haven't invoiced us, but they're starting on the utility work. All the grading is done. They put in the storm sewer today, the sanitary sewer yesterday, and then put in the electric. And they start working their way up the hill. They're going to start building the building in a couple weeks. So every indication is we'll be okay budget-wise, at least at this point.
Okay.
We haven't found anything that's surprising.
In completion,
We have the project schedule come out sometime in November. We think they'll wrap up for the year, which will be, the building will be built, and then our guys will move in and do a lot of work this winter. Maz is one of the subs, and they're going to do a lot of the pump installation, but we won't be up and running until the spring.
Okay.
And they'll do the paving in the spring, some of the landscaping work that we promised the property owners up there.
okay.
Bob, you mentioned if we go through with a change on the color for that building instead of just a plain gray, when you mentioned a block,
Yeah, we met with them the other day, and they, I think they selected a brown color.
Yeah.
So Bob, from the street in, there's not going to be any paving this year? Is that going to, from the street, from Main Street in, there's not going to be any paving?
No, we'll probably put millings down, so there'll be a hard surface there, but we're going to run out of time, because, when the building is being built, you're going to have concrete trucks running up there in October, and that's another time the plant's going to close, so think it'd be premature to put pavement down this year.
Gotcha.
The well house?
So that project hasn't started yet. Carrie and I met on this today, and we're running into MWE issues, so we haven't even sent the notice to proceed to our contractor. We've had change orders, and we've got a reduction so far of $12,450. That leaves us with the $28,585 contingency going into construction. There's unknown about the project schedule right now. We haven't even gotten that from the contractor. I could see some delays with this project, whether it's we're starting it in October. It's really only a building project. There's some grading, but we're basically building onto our well house and putting in like fluoride, I think, injection system in there.
And then lastly, the Times Square entrance.
So most of the demo is done on that project. We had a tight budget going into it. I think a lot of that funding is going to get used, but there isn't really, right now, we think we're pretty even working with the contractor. But hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll start forming and pouring the ramp, and we'll start seeing it come together and have a plan for reopening that entrance.
Great. Okay, anything else from anyone for strategic planning? Seeing nothing, I don't know. Do we have committee reports? Huh?
There was no PO.
No. Okay. So I'll make a motion to adjourn. Could I get a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Doherty. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned.
Okay, we'll jump right into public safety. Let the record show that all members are present. Approval of the September 1st meeting. I'll make a motion. Someone want a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unfinished business. I don't believe we have it.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
Oh,
On the agenda.
yeah, well, you're right on that. Okay, I will turn it over to Mr. Robinson to give us an update on the noise ordinance. And he has a handout.
So you guys should have a handout of the changes that I made. They're not color coded, you don't have a copy, but they're,
I think we did, we copied them.
Okay.
Colors.
We didn't get color.
Any color? We should have.
I got color. Here, color.
Oh, man.
I got black and white. That's all right.
yeah, I copied.
I can see the strip.
So you see the strike throughs, where I put the strike throughs.
Yeah, they only copy black and white each show.
Yeah.
All but unless Dory.
No, well, I mean, Fern gave me mine, so.
It's all right.
No, that's okay. You can tell the difference.
No, man, I don't see color.
So first I wanted to hit some keynotes, some things that I discovered or I looked up. First, I know this is a city. I know it's noisy. We're not trying to quiet down the city or to hush everything. What we're trying to do is address the loud, unnecessary, unreasonable, and unusual noises. This is the same terminology that is used throughout the other cities that I've looked up, and those are the only things that we're going to address. Again, is those things. And I find it weird that we call ourselves a city, and we fear this noise ordinance. This has gone on for quite a few years. I figured that when I looked it up, I see there's old information from 2002 from previous Alderman Teachman, Ward 6, where they had issues down on South 26th Street. And then again in 2002, they came back and he removed quite a bit of things from it. And the lawyer actually got involved, and then there's a drop. I couldn't find any more information on that, but I'm assuming nothing was done. Then in 2004, it was brought up again in Ward 2 for complaints from homeowners with bars and restaurants and hostings of bands. And then the Alderman President at the time, John Padlow, last thing I found, he said he expressed discussing the noise issue in the future. And then nothing else was brought up that I could find. Town ordinances and Olean, the town of Olean, just renewed their ordinance June 2010, Cornell 1992, Dunkirk 2000, Jamestown 1992, Buffalo 2006. I don't know the last time, I could not find anything suggesting when City of Olean was redone, but I'm going to say we're under original plan, or original ordinance since with the things that it was talking about in the ordinance just were outdated altogether. The mayor was able to get us information from NICOM that recommended, quote, using a decibel standard as opposed to a reasonable noise standard, end quote, as it is objective and therefore easier to thin. Moreover, the modern decibel meters are affordable and easy to use. Well, I wanted to shy away from that because, one, Olean already had a meter when I first moved here. I remember them going around with the meter, and I'm assuming since that's 27, 28 years ago, the meter is gone or doesn't work by now. You have to redo that. To go with decimal, you would have to rewrite everything that we've already started. And there is a lot of literature out on that, but again, we just want to target the loud, unnecessary, unreasonable, and unusual noise. In the 5 cities or the 4 cities that I did the comparison to, only one used a meter. The other ones do not. And they all have legislation written a lot more current than ours. And the one that is using the meter, which is Buffalo, when I talked to President Councilman Pridgen, he said that it's not going too well because they don't have the meters for all the police officers. So, with that, we are much, much smaller than Buffalo, so therefore I didn't think we needed to use anything of the sort. Let's see. In the section that I have written, section 2B1, it states, quote, any reasonable person of normal sensitivity. This is a clause that I did not create. This is a clause that was taken from one of the other cities. So with this clause in place, obviously it's hard to come up with the proper writing to fit what we're looking for. So everyone understands the word reasonable, and this word is being used in current state laws. An example, in New York State Article 125, of all things, homicide, reasonable is used 10 times. So therefore, I don't find it difficult for us to use the word reasonable when we're writing this law. Let me see. And as far as New York State Code, Article 240.20, Penal Code, disorderly conduct. This is the one that we will be using, number 2. It states, point blank, makes unreasonable noise. So anytime a person is found to be violating this law, they can be charged under disorderly conduct, 240.20, let me say 22. Throughout this whole entire law, the disorderly conduct, because we're worried about wording, throughout this whole entire thing, it says he. So apparently, she doesn't apply. So that was a rhetorical question. So we can't worry about those smaller things. I think this is something that we can focus on and get it right with this council to get it passed. I've been getting numerous emails and complaints and videos of people with noise issues. And I don't think it's out of the question with, there was one that's a little outrageous, and I pretty much told that person that they need to talk to code, but people are allowed to do things at their house during the day hours, and that's just the way it is. What we want to do is try to target, again, the loud, unnecessary, unreasonable, and unusual noises. So, changes that I made, again, I highlighted them in green. So what I tried to do was come up with a declaration, and the declaration was pulled from one city. And then what I wanted to do was identify ambient noise for those that did not understand what ambient noise is, and then try to have a definition for the loud, unnecessary, unreasonable, and unusual noise. Like I said, all of this was pulled from other cities and states, other cities, and then establish a time frame. That part I figured we can discuss and try to narrow down as best we could. I started with 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. except Friday nights Friday nights and Saturday nights, which would be 11 p.m. So that will make Sunday night go back to 10 p.m. because that begins the next work day. As far as, distance limitation, the chief mentioned in the notes when we had talked that some of the language throughout the ordinance was a little too restrictive. And I went back and did comparisons, and I do recall making changes to those distances. So I went back to the original distances that the other cities had. So,
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
Section 3, define time frame. The hours between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m.
Yes.
Should those numbers be reversed? Should it be between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Gotcha. That's the quiet time.
Yes. Quiet.
And then Friday and Saturday it'll be 11 p.m.
Yes. Let's see. So with the distance limitation, you see the strike throughs, and pretty much we changed it to 50 feet. And this is what some of the other cities had. And then again, the prima facie evidence, that's a matter of discussion that could be eliminated if needed. Skipping to 5.2, assuming that everyone has read through 5F, sorry. I wanted to make sure, because one of the biggest issues in 2002 and 2004 was that some of the organizations and local businesses felt like the ordinance would hinder them. So I want to make sure that's not going to happen. So I wanted to add in a provision which allowed businesses to continue to operate as they usually do. That way that would allow them to receive their deliveries. If it fits their business where they receive deliveries in the middle of the night, then obviously they're doing that for a reason. I felt like I wasn't going to interrupt that process, and that pretty much covered Dresser-Rand and some of the other larger corporations that were the major complainants back then.
So when you mean like business deliveries, you mean basically business operations?
Yes, just
So like
typical business operations where they're receiving deliveries.
So like the bus garage.
All
on
of them
Fourth
have been doing
Street,
it. Some of them start at 6.
That would be-
Just not supposed to. But
under new
I have
town
no problem.
scrutiny. You know what I mean? Because they
The bus
have.
garage is that the city, state?
No, it's the Carucci one, right? That's still over there.
the Primo Limo,
Primo Limo, that's what
the Empire bus line,
Gotcha.
Empire Bus Line.
Yep.
They're on South 4th?
South 4th Street, the
Yep,
100
on
block.
South Fork, almost to the end by Henry.
Yeah.
So I haven't read anything where they were an issue.
I know it was a controversial issue with the planning board, or the zoning board, whichever one it is.
For the variance that they had to operate the new business, which was different than the original business,
Right.
which was a hardwoods business turned to bus garage.
So it turned out they were limited to hours though, right?
Yeah, they're,
At the end of that variance? You know, how that fits with it?
I mean, their variance specified how they're supposed to operate. I think it's no buses backing out, things like that. The ambient noises was addressed in their variance too. I think they weren't supposed to get buses after 10 p.m. and they're not supposed to back them up before 6 a.m.
And I guess that's what we would make sure they would
We
stay
want to
within.
make sure they fit with this, at least to the point where if we write this in a way that allows them a little more time to do things, I think it's fair to say.
I think it's 11 o'clock.
It's 11? Okay, yeah.
11 o'clock, yeah.
'Cause I know Mr. Crouch, he made a case that some of the buses, in order to get to some of the stops on time, have to depart by 7 a.m. or some of them for games and football games.
Some of them don't get back
Till-
till 3 in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then his concession to those were that they were to, if I remember correctly, they were to just pull the buses in instead of normally they like to back them in.
Yep.
So if they get in too late, they just pull them directly in. So,
I mean, that way they're following the ordinance, so.
yeah.
I agree with that. And I'm just back to where we were.
Yep.
When Paul brought up, I think what you're trying to say is deliveries to business, right? So like, there's tractor trailers or something backing up to say a business on, off of First Street, something that's on Union and it's in the middle of the night, that's allowed? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm referring to is business operations. In 2002, there were issues with South 26 with, at the time, Kmart, Aldi's, and some of the other businesses down there where they were receiving truck deliveries in the middle of the night. Those companies expressed that they had those hours in order to be able to meet time restraints and get the materials and everything on time. So to keep from interfering with those businesses, granted there aren't many down there now. I mean, I figured I would try to eliminate that thought process so that we don't have companies coming in going, wait, you're going to interrupt. No, that's not the intent. So like I said, just those 4 things: loud, unnecessary, unreasonable, unusual, and there's nothing of what they're doing that fits that because they're conducting business. So I mean, it's at the time it was written in the paper. It was written in the paper that was pretty much the cost of living in that area. I mean, it was just one of the drawbacks. So they were trying to make concessions on both sides. So what we're trying to do here is try to create or recreate this and not worry about making concessions on both sides because we're going to try to make sure we eliminate hurting those businesses from the beginning. So
Yeah, that's kind of the concern I was getting. My next thing is to ask you and Bill, because we've got, 16 years of mayor's here or close to it, and I'm sure this has been a topic of before, and they know why it's been so hard to get through. But that, I feel like there's a care that needs to take place. We have overlapping industrial, residential places that are currently able to operate. People that live there have gotten used to those noises, but wish they weren't there. And all of a sudden, if they've got a code where they can call, I'd hate to see somebody shut down or us be asked to shut down a business because of the noise they're making if it were that situation.
I don't know if that'd be possible if we have a clause in there that, I mean, if one, I would imagine, I mean, like I said, I'm new, but I would imagine before this goes through that something would get proposed or put out to the media. That way you get the wave of people coming in for and against.
Right.
You know, and then, you go from there, but.
Yeah, I think we need that. I think we will.
Vern, is every one of the objections you brought up is from a neighbor. That was a residential neighbor. Like on 26th Street, there are houses in the back. Those are the folks that complain. I get complaints in my neighborhood from the hospital with the ambulance and the helicopter coming and going. So wherever you live, there's going to be something.
Yeah,
that people
that's
are
normal
complaining
city
about.
noise, yeah.
So,
So that's normal.
Yeah.
so would it not remedy those concerns to just, instead of, so you could say, the provisions of this chapter shall not abridge or be construed to abridge the responsibilities of local business deliveries and operations within the city of Olean?
Yeah.
So therefore, if there's, if businesses are operating with under, and they meet the zoning board requirements, they're operating under normal regulations, we could just say, right? This,
We could. At the same time, I'm fine on the other side of the fence with, we don't want someone who can turn it up a notch either. you know, that's been getting away with something, and all of a sudden they say, hey, you know, we can start an hour earlier or something, and you go through that. And the reason it kind of comes up as meaningful for me is I've had this Charles Street ball ground thing going on for a while that I've been trying to satisfy, and I can see where that problem exists. You know, the ball ground's been expanding over the years. They may be in a commercial, I haven't looked at the zoning map, I'm sure they're commercial or industrial over there, but because the way things have evolved, they're fucking right against residential. And those residences don't like it. Even though there may have been an automobile dealership there when they bought the house, it's expanded and it's gotten bigger, and they don't like it. And you have that fight back and forth. And so I don't want to see where we end up where we're kind of...
We give one side over the other a tool to attack the other?
Yeah.
Well, that's why we have an apparatus that's separate from us, right, to make decisions like that, and it's the zoning or planning boards, right? Like those bodies are set up to basically hear the concerns and make those decisions so that it's not a...
Right, but it'll only come up in the future. We've got stuff that's been in place
No, I know.
for many years, and until there's like complete redevelopment in an area that kind of resets the boundary, right? We have people that will live in those gray areas. You know, could be beyond their time. And I just want, especially with the way things get worded, I want to make sure we're clear on how those interact and what kind of problems we can cause that will come to light as we get into it. And I do think, you know, this one, I mean, I'd like to hear from Linda and the mayor, their input on why it's been so hard or so long, because I feel like it relates to something. So.
Yeah. Well, back in, I think I told you a couple weeks ago, back in 2000, when I was first on the council, it was a bar down on West State Street. And just trying, I think Paul Snyder was the president then, and just trying to put something in place that would, at a certain hour, the noise would go down. The pushback was unbelievable. And you would think everybody would be on the same page. You know, we live in a neighborhood, why should we have to put up with this? But what you touched on is where we have our zoning. We have our commercial and residential abutting each other. So you're constantly having these issues. They've been going on for years. But at that point, people came in and complained. So at that point, the council just pulled back and just did nothing. I know that was the experience I've had. When I was mayor, I don't think we had too many conflicts. I think one of the biggest was, what was it, Jake brakes. You know, the guys used to hit their brakes coming down East State Street.
Those are so cool.
Were really loud noises. Bradner Stadium, people complained that it was, you know, for football games and stuff. But I think that's covered in here, which makes sense. I mean, are you going to tell everybody you can't have a football game, you can't have a concert in the park? That's unreasonable. But that's what happened back then. It just kind of got pushed to the side and we didn't do anything.
And that's why I emphasize the reasonable, because these businesses pay. I know you can play devil's advocate and say, well, you know, there's some out there that may try and take advantage of it, but I mean, if we can word it to where they are just, I mean, I guess that's where the zoning board comes in. They're to continue operating as usual under their ramifications of what they are supposed to do. And then this is going to pretty much say, okay, you guys can continue to operate. You're not going to fall under this provision, provided you follow the zoning, whatever. And then this will pertain to residents.
I think one of the, Jason, I think one of the things that why it hasn't worked over the years and what the existing one is, it comes down to we can enforce, but then what does the court do? Okay, so if we have a judge who doesn't, you know, takes a look at this and says, okay, what's reasonable? And if he doesn't think that our law is reasonable or written, then they dismiss the charges. And then so if somebody comes in and is written for, let's say, I'm going to be real, the bass is way up in their car. You know, you can hear your windows rattling. Okay? And the judge says, well, you know, that's dismiss it. Well, the next time they're going to turn it up even more. So we've got to make sure that we write a law that, you know, we include, maybe the judge is included in here, and, you know, are you gonna support this? So we just got to keep that in mind when we write this new law.
One concern I do have too, can I just make another point? Under vehicles, section 7, item D, out of repair motor vehicles. I wouldn't want to get into a point where, I mean, you have to operate under the assumption that all vehicles pass a New York State inspection, right? And my concern there is that we would be writing a clause into this that would basically be targeting poor people that don't have that have you know, older cars worn out that are making, you know, noises, rattling. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but we're talking about okay, maybe it's the wording.
Cutting baffles out of your motorcycle to give you that real
But
good.
that's B, engine revving.
We already have in the vehicle
Well,
and traffic
could
law
you-
that law mufflers. So it has to be a certain, so that
Yeah.
would be covered. You know, away from this law, you have, you know, you can't have a straight line.
Yeah.
Right.
What I heard that term used like
Yeah.
that. So you have to have a muffler. So if your muffler is off your car and you're running it, that's covered by the vehicle and traffic law.
I mean, and that clause could be eliminated then, if we feel like that was something that.
I mean, is your intent there to the vehicle who has the loud bass, like, I mean, you can hear it outside, right?
Right.
You hear it?
Right.
Like that, so if they're, is that what the intent
You
of
can
that
feel
section
it.
is?
Pretty much to cover that loud noise with the vehicles, but I mean, it does cover that in B, so the revving and tire squealing, I mean.
Sure.
As far as the rest, I mean, like I said, this was pulled from another city, so they had everything covered, so I wanted to make sure. So let's take this one for instance. So he is in violation because he is within the peace area, the peace zone.
Or she.
Yeah, or she, or New York State. But, so in that instance, we could have an officer just go over and talk to them. They don't necessarily have to write them a ticket every time, but go over and talk to them and say, hey, we have a noise ordinance, you know, blah, 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 follow this, and give the warning. And not only is the word going to get out, a lot more people are going to have more respect for the law because they'll know it exists, and a lot of people turn it down for that, as the chief and I were talking, for that 1% that doesn't want to comply. That's when, if an officer goes over and they find out, you know, oh, there's a repeat offender, now we can issue that ticket.
So that the radio, loud radio in a motor vehicle, that's not just like during the quiet time. That's 24/7.
That part I did not take into consideration. So that's something we can discuss.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm thinking quiet time. I'm not thinking during the. I mean, that's unreasonable regardless, because if he drives past a school, you know, that's in session, or past a church, those are the things that are in there under the peace order. So, I mean, they're disturbing. And there's actually law. Actually, I wrote that down. Article 240.21 is disruption and disturbance of religious service, funeral, burial, or memorial services, which you'll have when you're out and you're doing, you know, having a service and you have someone moving by. You know, that's just disrespectful in the first place. So, and that's, like I said, that's already a law. So, the New York State law.
I would be more on board with it being during quiet time than just any time.
Yep.
That would be a concern.
Leave it alone during the day and just have it where it just covers
I mean, I'm not saying I like it.
fine
I don't
time
like that noise either. I think it's annoying, but
Right.
you know. And they're saying we go for the engine revving and tires.
Yep. I mean, the whole thing can be written for that time frame, except where specified. And I guess we would have to put that in there, except where otherwise specified, which I guess that would fall under the lawn care machinery, which has its own time frame.
Yep.
So,
I have another question.
Can I?
But John, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
so I have a house, that is,
Congratulations.
so I have a house that is a street over from me, and all day long they have bass blasting. I can hear it from a street over, right? I don't even live next door to these people. So do I really care if it's at the quiet time? Why should I have to listen? Why should someone have to listen to something like that for 7 hours straight? And they, seriously, I don't know how they could stomach that, the bass and such loud music for such a long period of time. Would, you know, I guess, would it only pertain to quiet time?
No, I think that would fall under the musical instruments and devices.
Okay, so that,
Trying to find that spot. I think it's A.
It's 11.
Yes.
11A.
So it'd be 11A.
It says during the hours between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So to annoy the quiet comfort or response of persons in any dwelling, hotel, etc. So I respect someone's, you know, ability to have a party or whatever, but this is almost on a daily basis. And unfortunately, I live far enough away. If I close my windows, I can't hear it. But
Poor guys that live next door.
I can't imagine. I don't have problems with some sounds in my neighborhood. If I hear a saw, somebody's doing construction, they're building something, they're fixing up their house, I don't have a problem with that. But the boom, boom,
So
boom,
what I think
boom.
you're touching on, John, our noise ordinance, if I understand it right, it doesn't have much in there, but it does mention animals and annoyances.
Yeah.
It may call it annoyances instead of noise. And I think it's written in here very similar, but basically what it says is we can't have animals that make annoying noises any time of day.
Yes.
And I have to agree with, and I don't think it's just animals, I think there's a desire for anyone to not want to have to listen to annoying things. And that may be, you know, it's going to change a little bit person to person, but if it's deliberately annoying or out of neglect annoying, I can see where it has a place in this ordinance. Specifically to me, and this is kind of strange, so across from where I have a shop, I have somebody who doesn't take very good care of their dog. And so he barks at the back door of the residence I've had the police go talk to him once, and it's cut it down, but I mean, they will bark there for at least an hour.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's home, that's if somebody's home, the dog barks at the outlet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bad enough where I can't handle that if I have to listen to that while I'm doing certain tasks. And so I do think it's important that we think about that, and that it's somehow included in the wording that, you know, either deliberate or things that, even if it's not deliberate, but it's you enjoying something, but it's annoying to more than one other person. You know, a general consensus would say this is an annoying thing for people around you.
Right, like
Well, I think
like
there's
your example. Like your example, John, you just walk out of the house and you're like, hey, this is the volume I like my music at, I'm going to work, and you just kind of like leave it going. People leave their radio on for their dog or cat, and this person just does that and wanders out of their house. I could see them, you know what I mean? I could see somebody leaving a radio on and just leaving, you know what I mean? But
Poor dog won't have any hearing.
no, I'm just so, I mean, I do get your point about the, you know, even just the inability, like whether it's intentional or not, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't want to. I'm probably the last person that would want a noise ordinance, but at the same time, I'm getting on board with this, and I have a pile of stuff. But I'll let you guys finish up this topic. I don't like to go down a road where we're, you know what I mean? Like everything is up for interpretation. You know what I mean?
I have a feeling that's why this one's been so hard.
Sure.
Nothing's ever done. It is complex. I mentioned an email I sent you guys. Oh, Chief?
I have a couple of things if you want to add. First, I have a question for Alderman Robinson. In the penalty section, why did you remove the stipulated penalties you had in there and replace them with using deferral conduct?
The stipulation we had in there first were in there And you had written in your comments that the first offense line is too high, and there is language in there that restricts the judge. You can't tell them what they can and can't do, so on and so forth. So what I did was I eliminated that altogether, and I figured I would make it sweet and simple. First offense could be a verbal warning, and then after that, the subsequent will be charged with disorderly conduct under 240.20, which is exactly what they would be charged under anyway.
I think that you should go back to having, of course, my conversation with you, those were suggestions.
No, yeah.
So here's the problem with going to disorderly conduct. So if I'm going to arrest that guy with a lot of music for disorderly conduct, I'm going to charge him with the legal information of disorderly conduct. You could write in here whatever you want. It means nothing because I charged him with disorderly conduct. I'm not charging him with the city ordinance. So this could be 40 pages thick and throw it away because I'm arresting him for disorderly conduct.
But again, the disorderly conduct for New York State, numbered line 2.
Right. It just makes unreasonable noise.
It says
My
unreasonable
point
noise.
is that, you know, we're getting into finite weeds and all the little details, which is fine. And I'm in favor of that. But this should be what we charge him with, not disorderly conduct. That's where we're going to make a step forward. Because disorderly conduct just simply says, I'm making unreasonable noise, which could be virtually anything. So you're on the right path for doing this, and I applaud you for taking it on. But I do think you should put back in there what you had originally, but maybe alter it slightly, rather than defer this law to disorderly conduct, because then it basically neuters what you're doing. Because I'm not charging what you're doing, I'm charging disorderly conduct, which is what the problem is to begin with, because it's so vague and so weak that it's quite often not enforced, and when it is, it's thrown out. So I would suggest that you go back to what you had, maybe alter it slightly, but I still, when I want to arrest Bill Smith for loud music, it needs to be city ordinance number, yada, 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 loud, make some reasonable noise, not disorderly conduct. Otherwise, this is no good. All the work you're doing is for nothing.
Gotcha. And but I strictly remember the issue that I had personally with that gentleman, that situation, that person would have been charged with disorderly conduct provided someone would file a complaint.
Right. So, you know, I've been here 30 years, and we've used disorderly conduct literally thousands of times to arrest people for making loud noise. As an example, something that most people are probably not aware of, that Judge Mountain did, which I always thought was smart. If the officer himself or herself didn't witness the offense, we need a complainant, right? Judge Mountain required 2 complainants. He basically called the chief down at the time and said, don't bring me a discount for noise ordinance without 2 signed statements. That eliminated the possibility of one neighbor just trying to get back at the other neighbor. And so we did that for many years. Until he left. And Judge Colombo, he doesn't have such a requirement. But we could arrest virtually anybody at any time for disorderly conduct, because the language is so vague. It could be virtually just speaking to you now. Disorderly conduct. The reason we don't do that very often is, why am I going to take the officer's time, the court clerk's time, the judge's time, even waste the paper to take it in front of me if it's going to get thrown out. So the goal here is going to be to write something that's enforceable and not be over-restrictive, as has been brought up by some people. But you're on the right track. The ordinance needs to be written. I'm all in favor of the ordinance. But I suggest to you, I don't know if you talked to Nick DeServo about this, the ordinance should stand on its own 2 feet with its own punishment. Don't refer, my suggestion is don't refer back to the penal law, because then that neuters your ordinance.
Yeah, I'll talk to Nick about that.
So, sorry, this is like digress for a second. You could arrest anyone at any time for disorderly conduct. The disorderly conduct laws are that vague.
All the law says is makes unreasonable noise. That's it.
No, from a noise perspective.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's, I believe, 7 sections of the disorderly conduct law.
Yeah.
They're very specific, but when it comes to noise specifically, it says he makes unreasonable noise.
Yeah, there's
That's
7
all.
sections.
But yeah.
You know, there's specific ones for other things, it's in a violent, tumultuous manner, and all this other stuff, but when it comes to just noise, and that's what we've used my entire career. We go to somebody's house, we always issue a warning first, you know, knock on the door and say, hey, neighbors are complaining, we leave, they're drunk, they turn their music back up the moment we leave. You know, sometimes we're back 5 or 6 times a night until these people go to sleep or get tired of us. Or they just stop coming to the door and they continue to play it all night long. The reason, in my opinion, this has never gone through is because it's such a complicated issue and there's so many things to discuss. You've all brought up valid points, and that's why it gets started and then it vanishes because it's a hot button topic. I mentioned Olean Robinson that when he came to see me, I said, we started off with a good one right off the bat.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that, Chief? When it comes to disorderly conduct, is there when an arrest is made in a what is it? They get a court appearance. They have to follow up with a follow-up with the court.
It's a violation, just
right.
as if the city ordinance would be. It's not a finger-verbal offense or anything. So I'm going to give you a ticket at the scene if I'm able to determine your identity.
Right.
And then you'll get a court date in the future, and then the officer leaves. That's it.
And then it's up to the judge to determine what the penalty is?
Yes. Well, if it's disorderly conduct, the penalty is set forth in the law.
Oh, it is?
Up to, I think, 15 days in jail,
Okay.
$600 fine, and then that's it. But the judge can, you know, he can say, I want a $25 fine, and you're on a month's probation, or, you know, whatever he wants to do.
I see.
But there's maximums already set in the law.
I guess I didn't know if by having set penalties, if it would help to expedite the process and not clog, quote unquote, clog up the court system. If you said the first offense is a $100 fine, is it could it be treated like a parking ticket then, or would that individual still have to come before the judge?
No, they're still arrested in
Okay.
the context of the law, and they still have a
Okay.
court. They have the rights
Okay.
like any other charge,
Okay.
whether it's a homicide or loud music.
Okay.
And you know, my only suggestion initially was that I can't remember what the 150 first offense or something.
Yeah, there was,
It just seemed
it
a
was,
bit steep to me, but that was just a suggestion. The biggest problem you face with these is, while to the neighbor or to the victim, this is, I mean, you want this person to be locked up for 30 days, you know, because they will not stop playing the music. But in court is swamp, it's overwhelmed. You're going to give somebody a ticket. Currently, we give 2 people a ticket. I think we're putting 45 days out because the court's still trying to get caught up with COVID and everything. So in 45 days, they might go to court. You know, and if they don't even issue warrants for them half the time anymore. And then they may pay a fine. So there's not a lot of teeth in this, other than if it's somebody who's a decent person and he doesn't want to have his name in the paper or her name, and they want to do the right thing, and maybe they're just playing the music too loud. You know, but like we talked about, the 1%ers, the hardcore, and they're going to just tear that ticket up for the officer and throw it on the ground. And, you know, for those people, there's not much to be done about it.
Okay.
so pretty much there's nothing we can do to get, let me reword this. So, I mean, we're talking about the 1%ers, the ones that will decide, you know, I'm just gonna do what I wanna do. So what you're saying is, because all of the most extreme circumstances have been mentioned, there's individuals that we have that pretty much won't get charged with anything.
Well, if we currently would do bail reform, and this is one of the examples that I don't personally care for. If I arrest Bill Smith, like you said, he may or may not go to court, and let's say the judge imposes the fine, $150 fine. Prior to bail reform, if he didn't pay the fine by the appointed date, a warrant would be issued for his arrest. We'd pick him up, and now we got him, and typically the judge would send him a little back because he didn't pay his fine, right? That doesn't happen anymore. The court system doesn't even issue warrants anymore for unpaid fines. They'll send them a notice in the mail, and they'll issue a civil judgment against them. So for the 1%ers who are on the system and they may have been in and out of jail many times, they're not gonna pay that, they're not ever gonna pay. And once you get one judgment, they'll just start collecting them. You're not gonna go to jail for this.
Okay. Well, we're gonna make sure we write this for the other 99%. And we'll let the police worry about that
Well,
one.
like I said, most of the time, most folks are good.
Yeah, right.
They usually cooperate.
Yep.
Sometimes it takes a couple visits, and when they come, we're usually able to get it done without even arresting somebody, most of the time.
I think you're on the right track here, so don't get discouraged.
Oh,
It's a matter of, I think on some of these things, we need some advice from Nick.
Yeah.
And, I think this is all in there, but you're right, if we can, the 1%ers are always gonna be there.
Yep.
So if we can make this for the other 99%,
So for you.
I would just, you can ask Nick about that, but I would put the fine and punishment in this law.
Put it back.
Yeah.
Just not as strict.
I would,
Well, I mean, make it whatever you want, but it belongs in the law that you're creating. So
yeah,
that's what I'm gonna arrest them.
my feeling is, if we have a warning process here, that
You won't ever get to.
a lot of people are gonna, they're gonna, you have a party, you get a little bit too much and you get a little obnoxious and, or you get, in the morning you're gonna wake up and say, hey, I got a warning, what did I do? You're gonna go apologize to your neighbors, so.
Well, and the warning process isn't just, the police officer will say, hey, you're warned.
I was gonna give them a warning ticket.
There's actually a ticket with a zero fine, $0
There
fine.
has not been.
What?
We don't have warning tickets. We never have had one.
Right, but I'm saying this would create that, right?
If that's what you want, we
Yeah.
can do that.
so, I do like what you're,
Is that we're talking about?
That's an idea, because then it's
I
documented.
think we need a process, where if they go and they do that one warning, we need a process on how we can track that. So that
Well,
they
we
go back
can
again.
track it when the incident report, everyone.
But that
go
could
to
be,
the house.
and that could be it.
Yeah.
As long as if they,
We're already doing a police report on it.
yeah.
It's just we're not handing them an appearance ticket or a warning.
Right.
But some places do have actual tickets that say warning notice on it. And we can do that if the council wants us to do that.
We don't need to spend money on additional
But
forms.
we already keep track when we go to,
But we are,
South
we're going to
Atlantic,
be,
head down,
we give them
how
a
many
warning.
times.
Sorry,
No, that's all right.
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, we just write down what time we were there, who we spoke to, we keep track of all that stuff.
So that's
It's all
what I'm thinking.
computerized, right?
I'm sorry?
It's computerized, right?
Yeah.
Like if you
Okay.
pull somebody over and you've seen the tickets they have outstanding, right?
Mhm.
You run their plate, you've seen it. That's what-
Pretty much, yeah. As long as the officer actually did the report he's supposed to do, it'll be in there.
so, Vernon, I do like your short and sweet, the first offense, issue a warning ticket, and then for, subsequent B, and maybe we can discuss the fine, but, you want to, what your goal is to do is, on the second offense, like, maybe they're the 75%, or, the 2%ers, they get close to that 1%, but you give them an actual dollar amount on that ticket, and they're gonna, they might pee a little bit, and I think
All the
that's,
cities all had the same first, second, third,
sure,
and they all pretty much had the same terminology for all three. After taking the chief's consideration, I was thinking, well, maybe we'll just simplify it, just call it good, and go ahead and just
Yeah.
cut out that,
But-
give a warning, and then go ahead and boom, there you go.
yeah, right, warning, and, $250 fine, I think that scares a lot of people, you know what I mean? And they've already got a warning, so it's not like this is their first offense, because they've already got a warning.
I would keep a warning, $100 fine.
Okay,
and
I mean,
escalate from there.
okay, what was our cigarette thing? Didn't we, like, you don't get a warning, you start with a $50 fine, and then it's like $250.
I
Or,
don't think I mean it.
oh, I'm just saying, hey, listen, I was against the no smoking in the parks, but there was a fine structure that was like, hey, listen, within the officer's discretion, there was just literally every time you get caught doing it, $250 fine. So, and that was for a cigarette. Like, this is for somebody who's, all right. So I guess I don't see the difference between a loud noise to my eardrum and having to smell cigarette smoke. So, I mean,
The only difference being that if I see you smoking, I've definitively seen you doing it.
gotcha.
Nothing.
Where with the noise ordinance, it's subject to, you might think it's loud, I don't think it's loud.
Gotcha.
That's the problem.
Sure.
To me, this whole thing is great and sounds fine, except for the fact that it's built under the presumption of a person being reasonable 100% of the time, right? Like, what was the comparison? You said something about it in the homicide law that the term reasonable is used a lot.
10 times.
10 times.
But that's, you know, probably, and I don't know, you did more homework on this than I did, probably reasonable assumption of guilt based on evidence, those kind of things, but a person cannot be afforded the same degree of reasonable assumption, right? Like,
My goal was to show you that we can't be scared of the term reasonable when we're talking about noise. We're just talking about unreasonable, unnecessary noise versus something as stringent as homicide, where reasonable is still being used. So,
but my point is that if a person is motivated enough by something they don't like, they will not act reasonably, and they will say and imply and directly, you know, implicate anyone, regardless of how reasonable it is. And we're putting it on a T form when we use that.
But who are we asking to be reasonable? Aren't we asking the police who show up to be the reasonable ones?
The neighbors say,
aren't they the ones that have the subjective?
Reasonable to any, or annoyance to any reasonable person of normal sensitivity.
Right. So.
that's the definition.
But still, for it to be enforced, I mean, I guess I don't understand. Don't the police show up and I say, well, you know, can't you hear, you know, the music next door?
and then they would make
And
the
they say,
determination.
no, I can't.
Yeah, and that would determine if the people are being unreasonable.
But that's where we're at now.
Yeah, and you're also forgetting that everybody has a different level. I mean, people have hearing problems. You know, I have a friend that talks very loud because she has a hearing problem. She doesn't realize how loud she's speaking. I do.
Yeah.
But I guess, you know, in a perfect world, everybody would be reasonable. Everybody would have the same level of hearing, same level of sensitivity. But
Maybe your friend doesn't have a hearing problem. Maybe you just have a hearing advancement.
Do you,
never know.
Chief, do you have any record how many calls you guys have gone on for noise? Or can you estimate it? Is it something you guys deal with on a weekly basis?
Well, a lot of it's weather dependent. You know,
Yeah.
summertime, obviously, you're gonna get much more windows are open, so
Yeah.
forth. The wintertime, it's very rare, very seldom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can try to look something up, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's a weekly.
Okay. All right.
A lot of
Usually when we
problems.
have somebody, it's a constant problem until we're able to fix
Yeah.
that problem.
Yeah, or people just give up. and
Right,
just don't
right.
bother.
It's true.
Yeah.
I have another question too, Vern.
Yep.
Section 12, construction and demolition.
Yep.
All three, I don't know if it's all three. At least the first two, right, where we're talking about excavating, demolition, grading, alteration, repairs, pile drivers, pneumatic hammer, dredging, derricks, whatever that is, right? It's weekdays, so it says, other than between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., weekdays and Saturdays. Am I misinterpreting that to say that these things would not be permitted to do, you wouldn't be permitted to do these things on Sunday?
Correct. You would not be permitted to do any of those things on Sunday.
Why would that be in there?
Like I said, I just copied it.
Oh, okay. That's what's in the...
Yes,
Where
when I
is
said
that
the
from?
Olean's noise ordinance is weak, I'm not lying. That's why I made the chart to show you that we have nothing in ours, and obviously other cities are enforcing it. But we have.
But the no Sundays thing, that's in our thing now?
But that's not in ours. No, that's
This is from his copy, from when he copied it from somebody else.
from another city.
Oh, okay. So I would propose that we would eliminate the weekdays and Saturdays and just have it at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
7 and allow construction or allow those things on Sundays.
Yes.
Could-
We're not Chick-fil-A, right?
Can I ask why we don't why aren't we consistent with the times? Why not just have the same times
Same times so
across the whole board?
10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And I think excessive construction too. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't like to give people another opportunity not to work or work on their houses. Hey, it's getting 8 o'clock and button. I think I gave you this example after a meeting was, there's a storm coming in and they got to button this roof up real quick.
They probably should have started a little earlier, right? There's always tomorrow.
Oh, sure, I get that, but the more I talk to people about different things with this noise ordinance, like when's your neighbor's roof get done? Once every 50 years? You know what I mean? It's not like every weekend they're just like patching another roof, you know what I mean? Just constant, you know, it's like, hey, my neighbor put an addition on. Hey, 30 years from now, they might put another one on. I'm not really too concerned about it. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know, for some of us, that's our bread and butter. I mean, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and so like, I wouldn't want somebody to drive by and be like, listen, he was making noise hauling drywall into his van, or, you know, he was loading something up onto a trailer to take to a job site. He had to be there by 7.
I mean, wouldn't you fall under the business aspect?
Sure, if we modified it to say the operations of a business, yeah. But then I mean, this section right here neuters that, or this is pointless then. I mean, if you're a normal operation of an excavating business and you show up with a mini, or maybe you got to remove boulders and.
Because you can't start work until 7 a.m.
But it says that would not to a bridge, or.
Right, that was so I guess, I don't know how we have to word that, but this is to keep from restricting businesses from their deliveries and their normal operation.
Sure.
Yeah,
Just,
but where
I mean,
we started is, I wouldn't want to say that people can't work on their homes or do construction projects around their house on Sundays.
Right.
No, I
so-
agree with that. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you should be able to do it 7 days a week.
And I also, I think you make a good point, is that we should have a uniform quiet time.
Yeah.
Right? And like, well, it's construction, so you got to start your construction at 7, so you can have your music playing till
Right.
10. Like, no.
Right. And so that, wouldn't you?
As if there's going to be all these people jackhammering up their sidewalks at 9:30.
Well, when
only did it once, 8 years ago.
but Kevin, when the sun, I mean, don't you think 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. will catch 99%? I mean, you're gonna
sure.
work on that roof until the sun goes down.
Sure.
And then you're done.
I get that. Now listen. So now you're working on the roof outside. Now that was one of the questions I wrote down was, how does this affect people in their homes or inside of a building? If I'm listening to a radio and I'm painting an apartment, or I'm trying to think of something else that I might be doing, maybe I'm sawing something to reframe a wall that had damage or whatever it is, and I'm running saws inside of an apartment. I mean, a lot of times I'll work on my own apartments after work. I get out of work at 5, and then I'll go, or I'll get out of work at 6 or 7, depending on what job I'm on, and then I'll go work on an apartment I have to get ready. So a lot of times, like the last week, I've got an apartment on Henley I've been working on, and I've been working until about 11 o'clock every night, and I leave there and I get up, go home, and get very little sleep, and wake up at 6 a.m. and go back to work. So I mean, that's.
Pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's
Exactly,
where.
yeah.
Sure.
I think it's reasonable. You've got
Oh.
saw noise coming, obviously you're working in a building in the middle of summer, it's hot, you're gonna have the windows open, but if you've got a saw that's gonna disturb people and hear that, I mean.
At 10 p.m., you're the one being considered.
Sure.
So you're the one we're gonna call chief.
Right.
100%.
Right. I get it, but I mean, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people that own rentals, and almost all of them have full-time, because it's very hard to be a full-time landlord. Like, it's just, yeah. And I mean, so I get that. I want to, like, so I mean, if we were to settle it with the, you know what I mean, the 7 to 10 or 6 to 10 or 7 to 11 or whatever it is just lump that under the same operating, I'm somewhat. Yeah, I wasn't sure what the ramifications of being in a house were, right? Like, okay, now you're not doing construction or demolition. Maybe you're, like the video you showed us, somebody fabricating something in his driveway. Had he been, maybe it's 11 o'clock at night, he got out of work, he wasn't retired, he works, some late shift, gets out of work and says, man, I got that hot rod I'm working on as my hobby. I'm going to fabricate up that new bumper or whatever it is. I'm giving an example, like somebody's fabricating something in their garage and,
But so what?
No, I know that, but I'm saying, I get that. I'm just saying, like,
Then the police show up and say, hey, buddy, here's your warning.
Knock it out.
You're
right, but
disturbing
that's
the
not
neighborhood.
construction, it's a hobby, right? So then what's the like, it's not music. It's not, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as a.
Oh, I
Does
see.
the distance limitation come into this, where if you were keeping your sound within that, this distance? The wording, I'm a little uncomfortable if I understand it just right.
Yeah, the distance limitation, from the previous season, I made it where it was 20 feet, and that was a bit restrictive. So,
50 feet from the source of the sound.
Right, so we're saying if you can keep your sound basically to your property
Right.
during quiet times, but then have at it, right?
And I figured also 50 feet, I mean, the average property width in the city is what, 40, 50 feet, so. I mean,
100, yeah.
So, I mean, that sounds fair. I mean, let's say you wanted to run saw and you're working late. I mean, you gotta close the windows and turn on the air conditioner.
Sure.
Pay the extra cost to be quiet.
Yeah.
Sounds reasonable.
Sure. I get behind that.
The only thing I get worried about is this is, I made note that I was concerned about the terminology and how it's written. And this is pretty good. This is pretty close to what I would consider layman's again. But it does get in, the wording does get involved in what it means. I almost feel like we should be trying to create something simple that says what we want, and then let the lawyer turn that into the terminology. Just so that way, I feel like if we're trying to word it just right, we're kind of spinning our wheels a little bit. And the example I give is that the fire chief has this document for fires in the city. Lays out real simple what you can, what you can do, what you can't. I'm sure the code is more complicated, lawyer written. But I think we can create it that way. Let the lawyer work back, create what terminology will allow us to enforce what we want in simple terms.
I'm good because I spent a lot of hours on this stuff.
I mean, no, there's nothing wrong with it. It's all there.
No, it's not mine, so this is from other cities. So
Right.
It's just a matter of reading theirs and comparing it to this city, and seeing which one I felt was best for this. And then
Oh yeah, and I get that. The thing that come up too is I'm curious why you specifically crossed out snow removal.
Does Paul snow blows at 5?
Heavy kickback.
Because in 2004, there was 2004.
It didn't. It does snow on all
Sorry,
hours.
it was December 2002. They eliminated the snow blowing portion because they tried to put that in, and there was issues that were conflicting with businesses, particularly in the middle of the night, especially those with large parking lots. They were not going to be able to get their areas clean, especially if you got dumped 3 to 4 feet of snow. It was going to be difficult.
I can get behind your deletion.
This is kind of example where I get into wording too initially, without having to go through that. I assumed by crossing it out, we were saying you couldn't do those things.
No, he's just showing where he deleted things. So that won't be there in the original. Anything where he's got to cross out.
Cross out is deleted, gone. Unless the council wants to add it in.
You deleted that though, and he left A under it. Is that to be B on part 1? Like unless it's the city, state, or other government operating, obviously, lawn mowing equipment.
What section are you?
I'm sorry, I'm on the lawn care and the machinery.
Lawn care, yeah.
So you deleted 2, but then there's an A under 2 that didn't get deleted. Is that just going to be the B for
Yeah,
number
would
1?
probably be B.
Okay.
That didn't change to B because A is still written in the Word document. So
Gotcha. Okay.
That's what that is.
I can and I can get behind the getting rid of the snow blower aspect too, because grass you can determine when grass is going to grow for the most part. It's pretty straightforward. You can't always determine when Mother Nature is going to dump snow on you. So
So the section on lawn care, is that saying we can or we can't operate lawn equipment? I'm a little confused on what we can do, can't do, and how it
shall not be used. You're talking about lawn care?
Yeah, I feel like
Just shall not
maybe
be
it's
used.
just because of the copy and paste, and I feel like we have these sections that are saying you can't do all this stuff, but then we come down here and there's sections that are saying what you can do. And I'm curious, that boundary seems gray to me, like we can't tell very well.
That's where we have to reword it completely.
Yeah.
To say we can, or we either make the whole document say we can, or make the whole document say we can't.
Yeah.
Yep. That's why there's no
And
rough
then,
draft.
like I said, I mean, in the end, I feel like our duty would be to have a pamphlet on our noise ordinance, like the fire chief has on fire.
right, it's the same as it's still a noise ordinance though. You know what I mean? So like, I was talking to a guy. He was trying to tell me all about his new Ego mower. It's all electric or whatever. They're very they're very efficient, and they've got an LED light, and he goes, dude, I mow my lawn at 10 o'clock at night. But none of his neighbors can hear it, so technically he's mowing the lawn, but he's not violating any law because he's not bothering anyone. So.
I'm for it. I think it's going in the right direction, good direction. From here, we just have to do some tight, I suppose.
It sounds good. It sounds like Nick has to just do the tweaking. Everything in here sounds pretty good. The only question I have is, what about residents that join these bars, commercial or down commercial properties? Bars sometimes in the summertime have to just go on until 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. Is that still permissible for these?
It's covered here, right? Is that covered by you did mention, and that's one where I was a little curious how it applied to. It says, let's see, so just under local taverns, bars, pubs, restaurants.
They just have a curfew.
Curfew.
And I could get.
The law in the city now, 2 a.m. That seems to be the time that everyone seems to. Okay.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, and I guess I never understood that. Nick's not here to answer it, but I know like Buffalo has a 4 a.m. curfew for bars, and that's.
DC was 7 a.m.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of like in Olean's too, and almost all the surrounding areas are. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that was an election that the city could have chose to do 6 a.m. or 1.
I think it's a county law that
Oh, is that what it is?
they can pass it up to 4 a.m.
County sets, yeah.
Okay.
So I guess, I mean, if
We
you
could-
can make it 1 a.m., then that still allows everyone to calm down a little bit from the music, and then the bars are open until 2 anyway, so.
No, I mean, I could get behind this. A lot of my constituents complain about bars, and you know what I mean. Like, I mean, I think if they have to kick the music off at 2 a.m. when they're supposed to be kicking people out, you know what I mean. That would, you know what I mean. That would make.
That's what you change to 1, and then they have an hour to kick them off.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
I
bars
think-
are there to make money.
I
mean,
think
they're-
2 a.m. is fair.
2 a.m.
I think the standard
And I think-
time.
I have a feeling a lot of times the crowd, if it's a.
They hang out.
Probably tends to be more noise than music.
Right, and there's your hooting and hollering. So if they've walked away from the establishment, now you might not be able to get them under bars and taverns, but they're partying in the Monroe Muffler parking lot afterwards, gallivanting with their friends. I'm giving an example that the mayor received that was one of my constituents as well, that he forwarded to all of us. I don't know if you read it, but no, that was a big one. They all leave a local establishment and then kind of hang out by their cars and smoke cigarettes. And I don't know if they have roadies or whatever.
I don't think it would be any different than when Images was down there, and when I used to bounce down at Youngers, and we had the police come down to
Sure.
certain bars because people just congregated instead of leaving.
Sure, and I think that then you forward them on to the whining, hooting, hollering, the public disturbance.
Yeah.
I think that's when you can get them for anybody that's just kind of still hanging out.
So just the way this is, if we left it the way it is now, is it give those businesses the ability to make noises everyone else isn't allowed to until 2 a.m.? Is that what it's meant to do, or not?
It pretty much allows the businesses to continue doing what they've been doing without interruption to their operations.
Plus, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, this was actually approved by NEC, and then we had to have a public hearing on this, correct? So that's still giving the public.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you're gonna have a lot of people coming for both sides.
we might want to, I don't know if you want to keep it in there or remove it. I don't know if we have much problem with hawkers, vendors, and other things in the city. Public disturbances below the hooting, shouting, and hollering. The barkers outside of the tent. Come one, come all. Got some event for you to see. I mean, that's how I read it.
I mean, I get the feeling, this is quite a bit to digest at this table. I wish I would have been able to look over it longer before the meeting.
It's been out there for a couple of weeks now.
Is that one?
Yeah.
It's real?
We skipped it last week, we brought it back this week, so.
Oh, yes, but I mean, since we got your document here.
We got this one 2 weeks ago too.
Really?
It's the same document, except
The deletions and the additions.
the strikeouts.
Okay.
And then I'd like to just kind of point out that I would like to see we might have to change something a little bit on the number 11 part B. It's just no person shall operate any musical instrument device, and I know this is intended to go towards more people that are playing, loud music and things like that on a radio after certain time periods. But, I guess then there's a time if you switch it to everything across the board as a uniform time period of quiet time, then I guess there shouldn't be a reason why you're playing your drums at 11. So then I guess that makes sense. Never mind, scratch that.
Can you tell me, Vernon, is your intent for the peace order for schools, hospital, courts, places of religion, section 6, is that for 24/7? So that means at all times the operation of any sound producing device or noise within 300 feet is prohibited?
I think that was the intent.
Is the intent
of the cities.
to have 24/7 quiet time around schools, hospitals, courts, and places of religion?
Correct. 24/7 of loud, unnecessary, unreasonable, and unreasonable.
Okay.
I wonder how, I see a lot of protests outside of courthouses. I wonder how that would
Protest, then they have to get
permit.
And the same thing would apply for like a church festival, right? Don't they have to get a permit?
Yes.
Right.
And,
That's under C above.
yes.
Oh, it is?
That's covered under,
Oh, yep, special permitted events.
So they wouldn't get a permit for their noise.
Okay.
They would just get a
Yeah.
permit for whatever they block the street off for St. Mary's or whatever they're going to do.
That would fall under that, though, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how would it work if, at the hooting and hollering part, right? Yelling, shouting, hooting, so I'm laying in bed, it's 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, and a group of kids are walking up York Street, and there's, hooting and hollering. I call the police. The police come rolling up through. Obviously, they see a cop car, they're going to maybe not be hooting and hollering as much. They're going to give them the warning based on my complaint. Is that how that'll work?
I don't know. Well, Chief, is that what you could go off of?
And then I would have to produce, like if I wanted, like
to,
Well, in your example, those kids that are walking by, that's probably the first time they ever done that exact thing. So then you get the warning, that we discussed, and in order for them to get ticketed, the same kids that have to do it, and you want to
you can stop every one of those kids, get their IDs, give them a formal warning ticket.
Now, if they're kids, they wouldn't have
Normally,
ID.
you wouldn't do that, but if that's what the council decides that you want,
You'd have to point the kids out.
I would say,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then because most kids don't carry ID on them because not all kids have. What if they're 10?
for nothing.
if they were far away,
And then-
we would try to identify, yes.
And then can you
just down the street, by this corner, yeah, that was us.
can you charge a minor, for example, let's say 10-year-olds walking around without an ID on them, so obviously you can't give them a. Can you charge them, or do you have to charge their parents because of their youth?
No, you don't get it.
No. Well,
First of all, depending on the time of night, if spending will probably take them home.
okay.
In all actuality, if you have some kids, say last night we had 3 young teenage girls that run our street. One was screaming at the top of her lungs to the other girl screamed back and then rode off, and the other girl stayed with the one. I didn't call the police. To me, that's something that by the time you even call, try to get a dispatch, someone slow rolls down there because they're not going to put on their sirens and go beep beep. It's minor. I think it'd be a wasted call. And in all actuality, them girls ain't going to stay there the entire time waiting for the police to get there. They're going to start riding off, and then you have the identification aspect. What if there's 2 girls riding back the opposite way? Now we don't know who will be identifying, so I think that's something we're going to run into where it's just not worth it to make a call, make an effort, or anything.
Well, and that's where I come back to, like with the loud stereos, right? Like typically those are loud for 30 seconds, and then they move on to the next spot where they're at. I know that's just a moving noise, like squealing tires. Like usually that's right away, and then it's done. Yeah, it's loud and it's annoying, but I don't understand how we ever enforce that. Like how?
Because you almost need a statement from somebody.
Squealing tires, perfect example.
But who's going to make a statement?
And we go do burnouts, right?
Sure.
And you doing burnouts, or some guy has a sport car, and then the police rolls up, we're caught. They go and issue the ticket right then and there, so that's pretty much what that's covering. I don't think it's designed to go out and, we better go out there and go find out who did that. So.
This is what I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around. That's all. That's why I'm like.
I guess there was and he no longer lives on my street, but there was a guy who had a hot rod car on Winters Avenue at the end, and he thought it was a little race strip, and he would, rev his engine up and, leave streaks down Winters Avenue. And so I saw it, and it happened over and over. If it happened once, I'm not going to do anything, right? But if it happens over and over and over, I'm going to blow him in for it.
But that's also more than just noise, right? Like he's endangering.
Oh, sure.
But
Sure.
I think the part that we're not taking into consideration here, being in public service for so long and talking with the police, we can write anything we want to, but you have to literally have people show up in court. And people do not show up in court if it's a neighbor or someone that they think is going to retaliate against them. So I think this is great. I think NIF needs to tweak it, and I would definitely vote for it. But I think we have to be realistic. I know when people want to complain to codes about something, many of them will call us, and they'll tell us, well, don't tell them who told you, so it's on us. So if we think people are going to show up in court for anything, that's going to put them in any kind of uncomfortable position, and Chief, you can address that because you live it.
Would the complainants have to show up in court for this type of thing?
I'm sorry?
Would the complainant have to show up in court to
Validate
It's
that.
like if they want to ensure a better
Unless
chance
the
of.
officer witnessed or heard the offensive noise and made the complaint himself.
Okay.
If the neighbor called, and a lot of people have scanners, they turn it on when they get there. This is a repetitive thing. We always ask the complainant, will you sign a complaint? Most of the time they will not.
So, and I see that aspect. I see the checks and balances of having that, so you don't have that frivolous neighbor that's just going to keep calling. At the same time, I also see where that's gotten us. We've got a lot of people that aren't filing the complaints, and we've got a lot of people out there continuing to disrupt their neighborhoods. So,
And those that do, you got to take the day off of work to come in here and sit all day long in court. It doesn't happen a lot.
But you know who does have the time to do that? A properly motivated, unreasonable person.
That 1%.
And that's what we're literally just giving them the keys to that.
Well, that's why, ideally, the officer gets there.
It's an aspect of the whole thing.
Yes.
That's what we're doing, exactly, Paul, we're just getting many teams and letting them run with it.
Well, yeah, I do believe even if some things don't work out end result, by making them, police come to your house, if you're somebody who doesn't do well-behaving things, you don't want the police coming to your house.
Right.
And having to go to court, you don't want to do that, so.
I think, I'm not trying to sound like I'm constantly just like dumping on this, right? In a vacuum, this is a great idea, right? And there's a lot of very good structure here. I just think in the wild, this is going to be a mess. Like, we're not going to be able to I just don't see how we're going to see any noticeable improvement. We're not going to be able to keep people from keeping their car stereos down because it's such a,
I think the notice for improvement would be those people that have been getting away with those things for a long time will now know that there is something out there that they can be charged with, and then we can proceed with doing that, putting something in place. Otherwise, if nothing gets passed, I could very well go back to my old ways and get on my crotch rocket and go to the mayor's house and do burnouts up and down his street.
Is that you?
And then, yeah.
sounds like a threat.
This is a long time ago. And then who's to say what law am I breaking? You know what I mean? Who's doing what wrong? The police show up and I'm long gone. Oh, that wasn't me. That was the other motorcycle down the road.
yeah, those aren't my burn marks on the asphalt.
Well, the other thing, keep in mind, you're trying to get some relief for people in the community who have been suffering from this kind of display by a lot of different people. And so that's where this becomes a good thing. You got you got the drum player who plays at all hours of the night and keep people up. This will be a good thing.
At the end of the day, we plus half of the council still, took to passing code to do rental inspections, and we weren't sure whether or not that was the right thing or it was written the right way. We just took an attempt to make some progress there, and so far, I think, so good. I mean, I think it has made a difference in our neighborhoods. So, you know, as we learned even with that, like, we can spin our wheels a little bit too long on something. We can always modify and correct and fill holes down the road, right? We can always make those changes that we say, geez, you know, maybe we shouldn't have done this, or we should have added that. Those changes can always be done at a later point. Sometimes it's just a matter of ripping off the Band-Aid and you know, presenting something that's reasonable and that, you know, will make 99% of the people happy.
I agree with John. I've done a long time too, and I commend you for doing this. I mean, you've only been here for a month or two, and for doing something like this, it's commendable, because you hit on almost every topic there is as far as nice goes. And I think all it needs is a little tweaking from Nick, some advice from the chief, and I think the public hearing, you got yourself your first look of law.
And I would just point out the NIP part. When we did the inspection, I mean, we got demonized by everybody. You wouldn't believe the landlords that called us and showed up. But the point was that it had to cover 99% of the people. We were told, you don't go after the 1%. You know, to everybody. That way they can't come back and say, well, you're targeting me. So I think we're doing it the right way. Definitely.
Well, I mean, the rental inspection law kind of targeted the 1%.
So I just need to make whatever changes and resend to the council, add Nick, and then pass it on to him, and tag your it. Got it.
I mean, maybe it's just me, but like I said, I'd like to get a little confused on what's allowed and what's not.
I'm going to change that. We're going to go with all not allowed.
Okay.
Not allowed.
So we'll pass this on to Nick, and we do have 2 more items to cover on public safety. So moving on. The next one is 109 South 2nd Street.
Yeah, I just wanted to give everybody, we got the quotes to tear that house down, and H.H. Rao Contracting came in at $12,750. So we do have enough money in the demolition account to take that down, but that may leave us short if we get an emergency. So I just want some advice from the council. You want to move forward? You want to look at taking the money out of contingency, or you know, this is the house that we got from the county over there. Eventually, we want to expand the fire department's footprint with a parking lot there. So that's.
I say we just do it, and then if there's an emergency, we'll go to contingency for that.
Does everybody agree about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
The second one it's on here is a foam trailer. I'm going to have the Chief Richardson talk about that.
So basically what this is we actually had this foam trailer in our possession for 2016, and the state's caught up with us that we don't have any intermunicipal agreement between the state of New York, Homeland Security, and the city of Olean. This is one of only 19 foam trailers in the state of New York that basically forms a foam passport, and what generated this was the crude oil, the back of the crude oil rail car that exploded up in Canada in the middle of that town and basically leveled the whole town. That's where this initially started from. So basically, all of this is just housekeeping type stuff. Where does have that? I do have examples from the city of Amsterdam and the city of Rochester of their PLs that they did, and it's just pretty much just authorized
Like this? Foam? Oh. Like it sprays foam?
Amsterdam's their Syracuse? Or no?
There's a train, like you said, there's a train exploded. It's a suppression.
Oh,
yeah.
so like water doesn't hit.
Right, correct. Like a fire extinguisher.
Yeah, no, I think it's.
Thank you. Got it.
So
This
Tim,
phone-
have we ever used it?
Yeah, actually, we're one of the more active.
We've had this, back in 2016, it was delivered to us, and there was no agreement needed, but now they need the agreement, so that's why we're coming to you now. So we'll put together the resolution for next Tuesday, which will have the agreements, as long as you're aware that's coming. And I just have one more thing. Good news. With our claim on the virus we had here, with the malware. The insurance company has been authorized to submit it. It will give us a check for $79,592.92. So our claim was $80,592.92, and this is less than $1,000 reduction. So we will be getting that, and that'll go back into, I think it'll go, because it was last year's money, it'll move probably into fund balance. But the question I want to ask is, we talked about upping our insurance on that. So we can up our insurance to, and I can get everybody that information, but we can basically go with, it jumps us up to 100,000 and some things, and almost $1 million in coverage for an additional $12,000. And what I'm asking is that out of this recovery money that we take 12, and we can do it. I think we might have to do it in a resolution, but it's not. We take the additional money, or we take the extra money for the insurance and up it, and then
Build into the budget.
You could create, well, you could even create a capital fund to fund it for the next couple of years too, right? You could take that 79,000, maybe create a capital fund that could fund this for the next 4, 5, 6 years, right?
Right.
Yeah, because there's always a chance of the.
I mean, it's not, the opportunities aren't going to decrease, right? If this type of stuff happening and getting hacked and the damage that can do. So, that would be my recommendation. I think that's a good idea, Bill.
Put it on for create a capital account for this. Okay, I'll talk to Nick about how we have to do a resolution, and we haven't got the check yet, but it's been authorized. We are expected at any day now. Okay.
One last thing before we go. Did we make a motion to postpone the PL 4920?
That was in the
I don't
bathroom.
think we did.
4920.
The noise ordinance.
Okay, I'll make a motion. Somebody want to say?
I'll second to postpone to the next
Postpone it, and
public.
Vern, you're going to change a few things, and then we're going to give it to Nick.
Yes.
Okay.
I
To
thought-
the city attorney.
So we're referring it to the city attorney for resolution?
Oh, I thought we were gonna. Okay.
I thought we were.
No.
We're gonna discuss that. I was gonna say because we talked about like making it all one quiet time, removing a bunch
We're
of stuff.
postponing to the next public safety.
Yes.
Yes.
Second. Yep. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any other questions on public safety?
No, but you will have to approve committee reports.
No, we do not, because we're not referring it out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.